Welcome to Spectrum's 2023 Remembrance Day Assembly.
We would like to recognize the unceded territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose land we live, work, learn, and play.
At this time, we ask you to turn off your phones, remove any non-religious headwear, and refrain from any applause. This is a solemn recognition of the service and sacrifices made and those that continue to be made to protect our rights, freedoms, and responsibilities.
Please stand for the playing of our national anthem. You may be seated. Mr. Cherry will now like to make some opening remarks. Mr. Cherry?
Good afternoon, grade 9 students, staff, and guests to our school. Today, as we gather in this assembly, we come together not just as a school community, but as a nation, to reflect upon and recognize Remembrance Day. This solemn occasion holds profound significance, serving as a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made by countless men and women who gave their lives in the pursuit of peace and freedom. Remembrance Day, observed on the 11th day of the 11th month, marks the armistice signed in 1918, ending the hostilities at the Western Front of World War I. Since then, this day has expanded to honor the brave souls who have fought and continue to fight in conflicts around the world. It is crucial that we take this moment annually to remember those who have faced unimaginable challenges, displaying unwavering courage and resilience. These individuals from various walks of life, united by a common cause, exemplifying the true meaning of sacrifice. They left behind families, dreams, and futures, making the ultimate contribution to secure the liberties we often take for granted. When we observe the 2 minutes of silence, let it serve as more than just a symbolic gesture. Let it be a powerful connection to the past, a bridge that links us to the struggles of those who came before us. In these moments of silence, we acknowledge the profound impact that war has on individuals, families, and entire nations. Remembrance Day is not just about historical events. It is a living tribute to those currently serving in the armed forces. It is a recognition of their dedication, their sacrifices, and their commitment to safeguarding the principles we hold dear. By honoring the past, we also express our gratitude to the present guardians of peace. In our world today, marked by rapid changes and diverse challenges, these lessons from Remembrance Day remain relevant. It calls upon us to strive for diplomacy, understanding, and unity. It encourages us to become advocates for peace, to reject violence as a means of resolution, and to foster a global community built on cooperation and mutual respect. When you leave this assembly today, carry with you not only the memory of the fallen, but also a renewed sense of responsibility. Let us be ambassadors of peace in our daily lives, promoting empathy and understanding. In doing so, we contribute to the ongoing legacy of Remembrance Day, ensuring the sacrifices made by so many were not in vain. Thank you.
Our band, under the direction of Mr. Jolliffe, will now play a piece composed by John Williams titled Hymn to the Fallen.
What does Remembrance Day mean to you?
Well, I guess that Remembrance Day gives us the opportunity to reflect on the losses that we've experienced in war and hopefully give us a reminder so that we never let it happen again.
Remembrance Day is a time when we take from our busy lives to stop and think and show gratitude towards all those people who served and continue to serve in our armed forces in various conflicts.
It means that we're trying to remember the wrongs of the past so that we don't repeat them.
Remembrance Day to me means a time that we honor and never forget about those that have given us our freedoms today.
Remembrance Day is a remembrance of some of my friends who I've lost in the serving in Afghanistan. I'm an ex-serviceman. I joined the Armored Reconnaissance when I was 17. I actually left to go on my initial training before my graduation, so I actually never had a graduation. And so I went to do my basic training with a few of my friends, and about a year and a half after our initial training, my friend went over to Afghanistan where he was killed by an IED. And so his name is memorialized on the cenotaph back in my hometown, and every Remembrance Day I sort of remember the people that I trained with and the friends I've lost along the way.
Remembrance Day is a day we should take to be grateful for all the privileges and freedoms we have here in Canada.
We honor the loss and show gratefulness for the people who fought and still fight for our country.
Remembrance Day is a reminder to all of us how lucky we are based on the sacrifices of others.
Do you have any family who served time in the war?
Yes, on both my mom's side and my dad's side.
My grandpa fought in the Navy in World War II.
I have an uncle who fought in Afghanistan for a few years.
One was a
he's
doctor
alive,
with
but he
the
still struggles
United
with
States
the effects
Army
of the war
Medical
to this
Corps,
day.
and
My
he
grandpa
served
fought in the Navy in World War II.
North Africa.
My grandfather was a high school teacher during World War II.
On my mom's side was actually
in Ottawa at the time, and ended up losing many of his students.
My great uncle Duncan lied about his age, joined the First World War, was fought at Zinney Ridge, was awarded
my
Medal
dad's
of Valor for
grandfather
action at Zinney Ridge,
served on a
refused to
boat
leave his best
on
friend to die
D-Day.
in the field, and spent the rest of the war in a prisoner of war camp. When he was repatriated to Canada, he suffered from extreme post-traumatic stress syndrome and spent the rest of his life in an insane asylum. I think he's the perfect example of the lost generation of World War I.
Thank you, drama and musical theater 9 and 10 students, Mr. Schwartz, and those in the video for sharing some of our school community's personal connections to the war and remembrance.
And thanks also to the concert band and Mr. Jolliffe for their moving rendition of Hymn to the Fallen. The artwork in the foyer was created by the art classes of Miss Rayner. They represent the thoughts and feelings that we all carry as we mark what Remembrance Day means to us.
Now we are privileged to have Petty Officer First Class and Senior Naval Communicator Board of the HMCS Protector, Dean Kijek, speak to us about the firsthand experiences to protect our rights and freedoms.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the staff and students here at Spectrum Community School for inviting me to speak here today. It's an honor to be here and have the opportunity to share stories and some of my experiences. My name is Petty Officer First Class Dean Kijek, and I've had the privilege of serving in the Royal Canadian Navy for the 28 plus years. I began my military journey at the age of 17 as a naval communicator, and currently now I hold the position of Senior Naval Communicator on the new supply ship HMCS Protector. Now, next slide, please. Now, before we delve into the rich history of our Canadian Armed Forces and the sacrifices made by our veterans, I'd like to take a moment to share a little story about the image you see here on the slide. That's me on my 25th birthday hanging from that Sea King helicopter in a horse collar during an emergency heel hoist exercise. It's one of the many remarkable moments that have defined my military career, highlighting the unique experiences and challenges we face in service to our nation. It's a testament to the dedication and teamwork that are essential in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm excited to share more about it as we continue our journey through this presentation. Next slide, please. Every year during the week before Remembrance Day, we pause to recognize, reflect, and remember the service and sacrifices of Canadian soldiers, sailors, and aviators, both past and present. They have shown great strength and courage in defending Canada and Canadians, as well as our allies, and the values we all hold dear. Values like democracy and freedom, on peacekeeping missions, in training missions, and in response to natural disasters. The history of Canadians in combat stretches back before Confederation and into the 20th and 21st centuries. But all of us who have served are bonded together by our desire to help those in need and to make the world a better place, no matter how difficult and dangerous the conditions. Next slide, please. So just imagine the courage it took to leave home at the start of the Korean War, 75 years ago. You couldn't write home very often, and when you did, letters sometimes took months to arrive back in Canada. So for families at home, that's months of not knowing where your loved one was, if they were still alive, if they were injured or ill. That was their reality. While Canada's military history is inspiring and often heart-wrenching, you might feel like it's irrelevant or difficult to hear. But today's members of the Canadian Armed Forces are still fighting to defend and uphold values like peace, freedom, and democracy, no different than the courageous veterans before them. Next slide, please. Now, the only thing that's really changed is the way that wars are fought. Gone are the days of the First World War when soldiers fought in trenches. With technology advancing at exponential rates, warfare is more likely to be augmented with social media content from apps such as TikTok, disinformation, and drones. While the shape of battle has changed, the challenges remain the same. The long nights spent away from home, missed milestones like birthdays and anniversaries, and the very real dangers of serving in unprecedented situations both at home and abroad. But to know we're making a difference, that's what makes it worthwhile. Next slide, please. Members of the Canadian Armed Forces are proud to wear our uniforms and to represent Canada wherever we are in the world. We are honored to join a long line of veterans who remain steadfast in times of chaos and violence to maintain or create a better world for all of us. Canada's military history is marked by stories of tremendous achievement and sacrifice. Members of the Canadian Armed Forces have served valiantly in 2 world wars, in Korea and Afghanistan, and in countless peacekeeping and training missions around the globe. Being part of Canada's military can be difficult and a dangerous job, and their reasons for joining are as diverse as the hundreds of thousands of members, past and present, who have served our Army, Navy, or Air Force, but we're all united by one common goal of making a difference, defending Canada and Canadians, and contributing to a more peaceful and prosperous world. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to help all of you learn more about the strength and sacrifice of Canada's veterans and military members. Next slide, please. The Battle of Kapyong is a prime example of Canadian courage on the battlefield. From April 22nd to April 25th, 1951, 700 soldiers from the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, watched from atop Hill 677, as thousands of Chinese soldiers prepared to attack. They and their Australian allies were the only things keeping the communists from seizing the road into the democratic South Korea's capital city of Seoul. When night fell, they were surrounded, alone and heavily outnumbered. The fighting was intense, risking himself and his troops. Lieutenant Mike Levy called in an artillery strike on his own position to force back the enemy assault. Imagine the courage that it took to make that call, knowing that hundreds of friendly fire shells were going to rain down all around you. But it worked, and the enemy was driven off the hill. The 10 hours of constant fighting resulted in 10 Canadian soldiers killed and another 23 wounded. While it was a defining moment in Canada's military history, this battle and the Korean War itself often don't receive the same attention as other conflicts. In fact, some people call it the Forgotten War. Next slide, please. Fighting in Korea was not just limited to land operations. More than 3,600 Canadian sailors served during the conflict. 3 Royal Canadian Navy destroyers were deployed in July 1950, the first of 8 Canadian ships to serve in Korean waters. Their duties included blockading and preventing enemy landings, fleet protection, humanitarian aid, and the bombarding of onshore targets. As an able seaman on board Her Majesty's Canadian ship Crusader, Gordon Kuhn participated in stopping many enemy trains from delivering their cargo with naval gunfire support from offshore during his 2 tours of duty. HMCS Crusader, with his help, held the distinction of destroying more trains than any other ship in the Korean conflict. An armistice that brought an end to the fighting was signed on July 27, 1953. But for many years, the Canadians who served in that war, 500 of whom lost their lives, went largely unrecognized for their service. So is it up to each of us to share the stories of Canadian Armed Forces members at their bravest and at their best so they are not forgotten? Next slide, please. So you may know that Canada has a long tradition of standing up for peace and security around the world. This year is the 75th anniversary of the United Nations peacekeeping. Canadian Lester B. Pearson was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in creating the UN's first modern peace and police force. And since then, 125,000 Canadian peacekeepers have been deployed around the world. They have served in places like Cyprus, Serbia, Croatia, Africa, and Haiti, often at great personal risk. Since Canada began taking part in peacekeeping operations, an estimated 130 Canadian service members have lost their lives in this courageous line of work. Maintaining the peace that others fought so hard to achieve is the responsibility of those serving now and those serving in the future. Next slide, please. So now, as you've heard, CAF members are war heroes and international peacekeepers, but we're also Olympic champions. Sport has always been an integral part of the Canadian Armed Forces. And in the 1948 Winter Olympics in St. Moritz, Switzerland, the Royal Canadian Air Force Flyers won the Olympic hockey gold medal. They were unstoppable in the round-robin playoffs, despite biased officiating and spectators throwing snowballs at the players. Several of these players were highly decorated Second World War veterans, like Flying Officer Frank Dunster, who earned a Distinguished Flying Cross for bringing a damaged Halifax bomber and its crew safely back to Allied territory. And Flying Officer Roy Forbes, who evaded capture when his aircraft was shot down, making it back to Allied lines after 5 months thanks to the help of the French resistance. These men and the rest of their team brought the same dedication and perseverance to the ice as they did to service in the Canadian Armed Forces. Next slide, please. So whatever their background, whatever their strengths, whether they wear the naval combat dress, the blue peacekeeping helmet, or ice skates, today's members of the Canadian Armed Forces carry a proud legacy that dates back before Confederation. As we speak, Canada is training members of the Armed Forces of Ukraine with our partner nations and working with NATO and Latvia to ensure the peace and security of Central and Eastern Europe. Around the globe, we are working with our NATO allies and international partners to uphold regional stability and prosperity. Next slide, please. And despite our involvement in international deployments, we remain on call to help communities right here at home. This year has been the worst wildfire season in Canadian history. We have assisted those in need on our own soil with courage and dedication. Next slide, please. So to finish off, I'd like to say that I'm proud to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. I'm proud to serve my country, and I'm proud to serve all of you. This Veterans Week, I hope you'll take the time to remember the role our veterans have played in making Canada the country it is today. And I hope you take a moment to consider the vital role our Canadian Armed Forces members are playing right now, both at home and abroad. There are many ways you can carry on the spirit of service to keep it alive. Let's continue to honor those sacrifices of Canadians who have proudly put on the uniform and defended the freedoms we enjoy today. Lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you, P.O. Kajak.
Spectrum Music Program student Cody Wright will now read parts of a wartime letter.
Excerpts from a letter from Thomas Harold Watts, written June 18th, 1915. Dear Arthur, I expect you are wondering why I have not written, but it is an awful effort to get all correspondence off and be on active service at the same time. I cannot say that I am enjoying myself out here. It is awfully hot and we are eaten up by millions of flies. Life in the trenches is not a picnic either. We have about 4 or 5 days out of them and 8 or 9 in them. When we are supposed to be resting, we have to go on working parties, digging, then wherever we are always under shell fire, so it's not much rest after all. The last shell we had in camp, there was 4 killed and 17 wounded. We live in a trench, and it is a mercy it don't rain, otherwise we'd be washed away. The fighting just lately has been terrible. Our shells knock the enemy always, and the sight in the trenches that we take is awful. We wear our respirators because of the awful smell of the dead. I never get the sight out of my eyes. It will be an everlasting nightmare. If I am spared to come home, I'll be able to tell you about it, but I cannot possibly write as words fail me. I can't describe things. How are they all down the club? And is Emmy still there? And is she better or not? And where are you spending your holidays? Lord, how I'd like a holiday. I'm so tired and would give anything from this continual banging. Now I must close, old chap, and thank you very much for all your kindness. Wishing you all the best. Yours very sincerely, Harold Watts.
Thank you, Cody. The advanced dancers will now perform a piece entitled Not About Angels, choreographed by our own Michaela Fox.
There's just time. So is it wrong to dance this line? If your heart was full of love, could you give it up? 'Cause what about angels? They will come, they will go, make us special. Don't give me up. Don't give me up. How unfair, it's just our love. Found something real that's out of touch. But if you touch the whole wide world. Oh, would you dare to let it go? 'Cause what about angels? They will come, they will go make us special. Whoa, don't give me up. Don't give me up. 'Cause what about angels? They will come, they will go make us special. It's not about angels, angels.
Thank you, advanced dancers and Michaela.
Now, we ask you to please stand for the last post, followed by 2 minutes of silence to symbolize the moments that guns fell silent and peace was declared around the world.
This will be followed by Reveille, after which our Remembrance Day ceremony will finish.
Thank you all for showing your respect. This concludes our Remembrance Day ceremony.
You may return to your classes.